This is CBC Here and Now.
Restoring trust in the police.
The AFN found a wide range of racist behaviors among members of both the RNC and the RCMP.
An Indigenous-led group is calling for real change. Coming up on Here and Now.
A growing demand for power in the province, but what about Muskrat Falls? Why another mega project is on the way. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. We begin tonight with more accusations against the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary. But before we go any further, we want to warn viewers. Some will find these allegations graphic and disturbing. 7 women have filed a civil lawsuit against the province, alleging they were sexually assaulted by various on-duty officers. Now, the incidents are said to have happened between 2001 and 2017. According to a report from the Canadian Press, all 7 women allege they were kissed or touched without consent or raped by RNC officers after being offered a ride home at night. In one instance, a woman says she was driven to a remote area where she was assaulted after rejecting an officer's advances. Retired Sergeant Robert Baldwin is the only officer named in the case, with allegations from 2 women ranging from unwanted kissing to rape. In an email Monday, Baldwin's lawyer says he denies all allegations. The women are being represented by lawyer Lynn Moore. She says they are not pursuing criminal charges. Well, staying with the story, an Indigenous-led group says the 2 police forces in this province do not have the public's trust, and it's calling for action to change that. The First Voice Working Group on Police Oversight released its final report today. It has 26 recommendations, including the creation of a civilian-led police oversight board and specifically the eventual removal of the RCMP from this province. Here and Now's Mark Quinn reports.
Here's how Indigenous leaders in St. John's describe policing in Newfoundland and Labrador.
We have consistently heard stories from members of our community in St. John's that they feel over-policed and yet under-protected by the RNC. We know that Indigenous communities well beyond St. John's have had similar experiences with both police forces in our province.
And more specifically, Indigenous people's experience with the RCMP.
The systemic racism prevalent in police forces throughout Canada goes back much further, to the very beginning of policing in Canada itself. The Northwest Mounted Police, the predecessor for the RCMP, was created specifically to remove Indigenous peoples from our lands to make way for colonization. That practice continues to this day in various forms.
One of the group's recommendations is that the RCMP be removed from this province by 2030. But the recommendation at the forefront today is the call for a civilian-led police oversight board.
It's a body that would be politically neutral, independence of police, and that would reflect the province's diverse communities. This type of body actually already exists in at least 7 different provinces.
The group that produced the report says it's clear that proper police oversight is not being done in this province, and they're calling for a commitment from the provincial government to change that.
And the way we get started is by acknowledging that there's a problem and agreeing on a path forward to solving that problem.
It was hoped that RNC Chief Pat Roach would attend, but he wasn't here. The province's Justice Minister was here, and he took part in a ceremony to accept the final report. Speaking with reporters, John Hogan stopped short of committing to the establishment of a civilian-led oversight board.
There's always room to look at improvements in the system. They did acknowledge that there is public oversight of the policing agencies in this province, the Public Complaints Commission and CERT. And again, I know that they would say, well, there are areas there that need to be strengthened. And that may be some of the areas that are the low-hanging fruit we can look at to make sure there's as much independence as possible when it comes to oversight of these police agencies in the province.
He has to act upon it. So we need to see these recommendations looked at seriously. And for me, the very first recommendation that I think has to have priority is the recommendation with respect to a civilian-led police oversight body.
The groups that produced today's report say there can be no doubt that there is systemic racism in our police forces and that the bodies that now oversee those forces are failing. They're promising to push for real change. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
We're getting a clearer picture today of the scale of the damage on the southwest coast. Looking at some numbers, 805 households have registered with the Red Cross. That means more than 1,000 people require financial support, housing, or other immediate needs. 260 dwellings have been impacted by the post-tropical storm, and nearly all of those homes have been assessed for structural integrity. Premier Andrew Furey and some members of his cabinet provided that update today. The military is still on the southwest coast helping clean up, and Furey says the amount of damage he and others saw is helping them with government's response.
I can tell you they were the most heartbreaking stories when you're standing on the side of a road, and we were in Marguerite, I think, and talking to a gentleman who owned his house, and it was lifted, twisted, sat back down, waterlogged, demolished. He said, he didn't have any insurance or wasn't going to be covered, but here was his whole life savings, his whole home that he'd lived in for basically his whole adult life. And when we told him, don't worry about it, the $30 million package will look after you. You could see the stress and strain come from his shoulders, come from his face, and there was a great deal of relief.
And one of the biggest concerns is over insurance coverage. Government is hearing a lot of complaints from residents.
Adjusters moving around, and the general consensus seems to be in most cases there will not be coverage. I think we've managed to take care of the immediate, concern, which is, we're telling people we're going to be there for you. The insurance part we will figure out.
And the Prime Minister has announced new funding to help Atlantic Canada recover. $300 million in aid is being earmarked by the federal government to help the region rebuild after the storm hit 10 days ago.
We know that there are already programs in place, agricultural programs, disaster mitigation and financial assistance programs. This fund will be there for anyone who is not covered by any of the other programs.
Justin Trudeau says the money will provide assistance over the next 2 years to help fix and reconstruct critical infrastructure like wharves and harbors damaged in the storm. The fund will also go towards homeowners whose residences have to be rebuilt and to those lacking insurance to replace them. While the cleanup continues on the southwest coast, crews are continuing to work to restore power to thousands of people in Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia. And later in the show, in about 20 minutes, we'll hear from a federal cabinet minister from this province about who qualifies for the new funding and how it can be accessed.
Good evening. I'm Heather Gillis, and I'm going to be filling in for Ashley over the next couple of weeks while she's on a much-deserved holiday. So let's dive right into our weather headlines. So tomorrow, it's going to be above seasonal on Wednesday. If you think today was an absolutely beautiful day across the province, well, tomorrow looks like it's going to turn out even better with temperatures in the mid to upper teens in some areas, hitting as high as 20 degrees in one part of the province. I'll tell you where a little bit later. However, that's not going to stick around forever. We're going to have some showers move in on Thursday for parts of the island. Towards the end of the week, we could even see a little snow in Labrador. I'll tell you where and what to expect a little later on Here and Now.
Thanks, Heather. Well, a surge in demand for electricity is forecasted for this province, and hydro officials believe an expensive expansion to the Bay d'Espoir hydro plant is part of the answer. Meanwhile, the fate of the Holyrood power plant is more open-ended than ever as the permanent search for Muskrat Falls backup continues. Here Now's Terry Roberts reports.
A decade after Muskrat Falls was sanctioned, utility executives in this province are again talking about costly hydro projects.
It's essentially a new generating unit, and it brings great capacity to the province.
Hydro is proposing to install an 8th generating station at Bay d'Espoir, 154 megawatts, partly to meet what officials say will be a growing demand for clean power over the next decade, and to serve as a partial backup to the Labrador Island Link, known as the LIL. The 1,100-kilometer extension cord from Labrador to the Avalon Peninsula has been plagued with delays and technical problems and is not as reliable as promised.
So the main conclusions of this report are that we are going to require backup generation on the island in the event of a LIL outage, and that Holyrood is not a permanent solution.
Hydro wants to spend $500 million to expand Bay d'Espoir, a plan that could see it rival Muskrat Falls in terms of power output. An application could go before the Public Utilities Board by next year, but it could be the end of this decade before the power starts flowing. And what's that mean for electricity bills? Well, that's a big question.
The recommendation is to ensure we have appropriate backup for the LIL and to ready ourselves for the growth that we know is coming.
Even Hydro's former CEO agreed Muskrat Falls is a boondoggle. So can the Crown utility be trusted to get this next mega project right? Williams is promising a rigorous and transparent process.
We will take all of the lessons learned from the history and incorporate that go forward. So I'm very confident in our ability to execute this project if it's sanctioned appropriately.
And what about the Holyrood power plant? The promise in the pitch for Muskrat Falls was the old diesel-burning plant would shut down, replaced by clean hydropower. That was supposed to happen 2 years from now. But until a permanent, cost-effective, and cleaner replacement can be found, it will continue spewing its gases into the air.
We believe that we should have backup in the event that the LIL doesn't function as originally planned, and that we will keep it in service until we have other sources in place or until the LIL operation proves that it can operate closer to what its original intention was.
Hydro is confident the Labrador Island Link will deliver power this winter, meaning reduced need for Holyrood. But after years of Muskrat controversy and billions in cost overruns, Hydro has to build trust before it builds a new turbine. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, the province is offering 100,000 reasons for medical professionals to move back home. There are several new offers up for grabs for anyone who's been living out of province for at least 6 months. You also have to be born, trained, and educated in the province with previous work experience here. So doctors can get $100,000 for agreeing to stay for 5 years. Nurse practitioners can get $60,000 for 3 years. There are also offers for RNs, LPNs, advanced care paramedics, and primary care paramedics, as well as incentives for non-Newfoundland and Labrador residents. To dive deeper into these details, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/nl. Interim opposition leader David Brazel experienced what's being called a medical event early yesterday morning and is in hospital in St. John's. Brazel says he's doing well and he's in good spirits, but needs time to recover. Barry Penton will assume his duties in the House of Assembly until he returns. The legislature resumes sitting tomorrow. Well, now to some news about local news. As of October 17th, there will no longer be a Monday print edition of the Telegram. The Saltwire Network says increasing inflation on print operations and rising fuel costs are behind the decision. Chief Operating Officer Ian Scott says the audience size is significantly larger online than it is for the printed paper, and the Monday edition is the smaller of the printed editions. The company is also cutting Monday print editions of its papers in Halifax, Cape Breton, and Charlottetown. Well, Tech NL kicked off Innovation Week at the St. John's Convention Centre today. It's an annual event to promote the Newfoundland and Labrador tech industry. Now, organizers say they're also hoping to convince young people to consider tech as a career because they hope to have thousands of jobs to fill in the coming years.
So this week is Innovation Week. It's our annual event. It's actually the 9th time that we organize Innovation Week. It's a week where we bring together the different stakeholders of the technology ecosystem to learn, network, and also celebrate all the great accomplishments in the tech sector.
Everybody has a set of measures or targets that they're working towards.
Our province is bursting with opportunities in the tech sector, and a lot of our students have no idea. I think it's because software companies tend to be a little bit less visible. So our role and my role is to really get in front of students and tell them about the opportunities here in the province to work in tech. Many of them have no idea about some of the companies that we have, so it's really exciting just to tell them about some of the cool tech that's being developed and the opportunities that they can do in their career path.
It's my birthday, by the way, and I couldn't think of a better way to spend it other than with you folks here today. So.
Should we sing? I came from a construction and property management background. I'm an accountant. So one of the misconceptions, I think, is what is a tech career. It's not necessarily just coding or software development. There's oodles and oodles of types of careers that you can have in customer support, customer service, sales, marketing, accounting, finance. It's incredibly fun. It's exciting. I think it's what's going to turn our economy around in Newfoundland, and it's going to be what helps us succeed for centuries to come.
Johnny Harris and the crowd from Still Standing were in Wabush last week filming an episode for the show's upcoming season. Still Standing is all about finding humor in unlikely places, small towns on the ropes. Season 8 premieres in January on CBC, so keep an eye out for Wabush.
Had a beautiful day across Newfoundland and Labrador today with temperatures in the mid to upper teens. The mercury should creep a little higher tomorrow. Stay tuned. We'll tell you how warm it's going to be.
Time for a look at the weather forecast, and Heather Gillis is with us this evening, her debut on Here and Now doing the weather. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
How are things looking with the weather?
Well, today was a beautiful day. As you all know, I threw on my shades at lunchtime, driving home for lunch. Tomorrow, though, looks even better. So let's take a look at how things are shaping up. We can see here our highs today in St. John's. It reached 14 degrees. A little cooler down on the southern Avalon to Cape Race, 15 in Marystown. 13 to 14 along the south coast of the island and into the west coast. However, into central Newfoundland, into Grand Falls, Windsor, and Gander, it was 17 degrees today and 18 in Badger, looking like an absolutely beautiful day there. Beautiful along the north coast of the island, 16, 17 degrees. You can't ask for any better during this time of year. Up into Labrador, also warm temperatures, 17 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and into Cartwright. A little chillier along the coast of Labrador, 14 from Makovic there to Nain and Churchill Falls and into Labrador City. Taking a look at our future tracker now. So this is what it's going to look like this evening. The island of Newfoundland is going to be under clear skies except for the northern peninsula. There will be a little bit of cloud cover there. If we're moving on into the morning, we're going to see some precipitation on the east side, a few showers here on the east side of the northern peninsula. So let's take a look at how that's all going to shape up overnight. So it's still going to be quite chilly overnight for the island of Newfoundland, 4 in St. John's and Marystown, a little warmer into central Newfoundland under those clear skies that I just mentioned, 8 degrees in St. Anthony, chillier up into Labrador, -1 in Labrador City. There was a wind warning in Nain earlier today. That has ended now. However, it's still going to be breezy overnight there with the winds gusting 50 to 70 kilometers per hour from the west. Going into tomorrow morning, we're going to see some of that cloud dissipate, but some fog building tomorrow evening across Newfoundland and into Thursday. It looks like there is some precipitation going to creep up, so we're going to say goodbye to those nice warm temperatures on Wednesday. Going into Thursday, it will look a little bit more seasonal. Tomorrow, let's get to that. Looks like an absolutely beautiful day across the Avalon Peninsula. Like I said earlier, it is above seasonal. So 16 for the Avalon, 18 Clarenville and Bonavista. Normally this time of year, it's about 12, 13 degrees, so quite warm compared to what it should be. Moving on into central Newfoundland now, 18 degrees tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud. It will be chillier along the Conagra Peninsula at 13, still a mix of sun and cloud, still a beautiful day for that part of the island. On to the west coast now. Still 13 along the south coast and the southwest coast, getting a little warmer on the west coast of the island into Stephenville and Corner Brook and even Gros Morne at 17. But look at that, Bayvert. You're going to have an absolutely beautiful day, 19 degrees. Moving on up into Labrador now and the northern peninsula, 16 in St. Anthony, 20 degrees in Mary's Harbour. That is way above seasonal, where in Labrador and some areas, it's usually about 8 degrees this time of year. Cartwright 17, still quite warm in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Tomorrow, 12 in Churchill Falls and Labrador City, Wabush area, where it's going to be 12, a little cooler and a bit breezy there on the coast of Labrador. Now, Friday, it looks like we could see some showers spread across the island and parts of Labrador. I'll have a little bit more to say about that later on Here and Now.
I'm Zach Gowdy at Colonial Building in St. John's, where today 8 people are being inducted into the Order of Newfoundland and Labrador, the province's highest honor. This year's inductees come from the fields of medicine, arts and culture, and public service. And though they've all achieved great things on behalf of this province, they each told us that this is truly special.
I mean, obviously it's a great honor. You know, I would be remiss, I think, if I didn't give credit to the public health teams in the province. Really, I accept this on behalf of all of them, because there's no way that I could have done what I did if they didn't do what they did.
This isn't something you plan, I don't think. I mean, you do things that you're comfortable with, that you wish to do, whether it's volunteering, and in most cases, I hope, in your actual work, and all of a sudden there's that award, and you're grateful for it, thankful for it, never ever planned it, but really special feeling to receive it.
It was interesting. I started my career with HIV and AIDS, and I ended it with COVID, and there was a lot of work in between, not on infectious diseases, but on promoting health, which is incredibly rewarding. This has been a very moving time, and it's quite an honor, particularly knowing the people who nominated you had that much trust and respect for the work you've done, so it's been quite an honor.
I think the introduction of French first language education is the most important part of what we've done. I didn't do this alone, of course. It was part of a team, but certainly French education in the province is first language is the most important part that I've dealt with.
A lot of what I do really involves teamwork, and so occasionally I'm the face of things, and it's kind of why I'm here. So it's always a little guilt as well in getting this, but just the same, I was moved by it. I think is the best way of putting it, and I actually found just even the ceremony, right? Most things a little stoic and just sort of look there, and this one was, yeah, it just got to you.
Well, now that we know how much money Ottawa is providing to people dealing with storm damage, there are questions over who qualifies for the assistance and how they can get it. We'll have those answers coming up. Returning now to Ottawa's relief fund for victims of post-tropical storm Fiona. $300 million was announced today. It's meant as a supplement to the $30 million the province will provide to help with losses not covered by insurance. The CBC's David Cochrane spoke with MP Goody Hutchings in Ottawa today to get more details about who qualifies for funding and how to apply.
Well, Minister, this $300 million relief fund, how will that tangibly help the people in Port aux Basques and the communities around it on the southwest coast?
Look, David, thanks for having me today. It's still devastating. I spoke with some of the local mayors again this morning, and they're still in recovery mode. But we want everybody to know that we're there for them, and we'll be there until we get back on our feet. And the road is going to be a long way, but this money is to roll out immediately. So if folks don't see that they fit under the Disaster Financial Assistance Agreement with the province, and it's going to be rolled out through a CO, which is great. As you know, at home in Newfoundland and Labrador especially, a CO is on the ground. So it'll help with community buildings maybe that were impacted that need to get back on their feet. Small craft harbors, I don't need to tell you the importance of small craft harbors and wharves, especially in the fishing industry. So it's there to get out. It's $300 million over 2 years, and a CO is on the ground in that area. They arrived yesterday, so they're assessing for themselves what the damage is.
So it's essentially a gap filler. If you've got those uninsured losses that private insurance doesn't cover, or if it doesn't exist under the existing agreements, this will sort of fill in those blanks. But if you look at the estimates of the damage, it's $700 million kind of as a floor, and maybe even above that. I mean, will this $300 million and the existing programs, how confident are you that it'll even cover those losses?
I'm very confident. And again, as you know, under the Disaster Financial Agreement with the provinces, we end up paying probably 90% of that. So of course the province is going to deal with the infrastructure, and trust me, there's tons of it. Roads, wastewater, storm sewers, that they're dealing with some of the housing component. So those programs will all run through that funding, which again, we will pay the lion's share, and trust me, the damages are fierce. I've got every confidence in the world. As you know, the Prime Minister visited, and he was really taken aback, I can tell you. When we walked down, when we hit the crest of Water Street East, he was taken aback with the damage, because to see it firsthand is something else. I spoke with the Deputy Prime Minister on the weekend, and she knows. But we need a starting point. This is the starting point, and I'm very grateful that it's being delivered through a COA on the ground.
So how will people know if they need to go through this program or wait for the larger existing disaster financial relief programs? And how will they know if this is the right one for them?
So everybody needs to register with the Red Cross. That's kind of like the data bank of who needs help. Whether you've lost a fishing stage, whether you've lost your home, whether you lost your car, that's the data bank of information, and you register your loss there, and then some will go through the province. A CO will be able to work with the individuals on that list to see if you apply under this new fund. The other thing a CO is doing is reaching out to projects that were ongoing and saying, look, David, don't worry. We know you've got other things on your mind now. Don't worry about losing your funding as you rebuild. Let's get the town rebuilt and on its feet. And towns, I should say, it's just not Port aux Basques, as you know. So they've reached out to existing funding partners to say, don't worry, your money will be there. But this new fund is to address that gap.
What if the gap is greater than $300 million? Because the storm surge is what did a lot of the damage in Port aux Basques in particular. And a lot of people either don't have that insurance, or the insurance companies aren't going to cover that sort of thing. So how much room is there to go north of $300 million if that's what it takes?
Well, we have other funds too. Like we've got the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund. Uninsured losses can also go through the Disaster Financial Assistance Agreement with the province. So now there's two avenues. But we have to build back better and stronger. Like this, I heard everywhere. I can't live here anymore. I've lived here all my life. I can't live near the water. But the other part is we have to build back better and stronger. We know with the warming oceans, we're going to see these bigger storms. The impact is going to be greater, and we've got to build back stronger.
Minister, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, over-policed and underprotected. For decades, that's the feedback First Light has heard firsthand from members of the Indigenous community. As you heard earlier, those stories of mistreatment and racism have informed a new report on better police oversight in the province. The report and its recommendations were presented to the public earlier today in St. John's.
Our hope in leading this project under the banner of First Voice is that trust can be built between police forces and the communities in which they serve and which they live. Anyone who calls this province home, we want them to have confidence that policing is serving the public interest.
Ever since the St. John's Native Friendship Centre opened in 1983,
we have consistently heard stories from members of our community in St. John's that they feel over-policed and yet under-protected by the RNC. We know that Indigenous communities well beyond St. John's have had similar experiences with both police forces in our province. The systemic racism prevalent in police forces throughout Canada goes back much further to the very beginning of policing in Canada itself. The Northwest Mounted Police, the predecessor for the RCMP, was created specifically to remove Indigenous peoples from our lands to make way for colonization. The Assembly of First Nations held a series of community-based engagement sessions across the island earlier this year to explore First Nations people's experiences with police. The AFN found a wide range of racist behaviors among members of both the RNC and the RCMP. These behaviors include the confiscation of sacred items such as eagle feathers and medicine bundles, physical intimidation, and openly mocking cultural traditions. The working group is suggesting that when all the measures in this report are implemented by the province should then consider phasing out contract policing to the RCMP completely in Newfoundland and Labrador by 2030.
Well, vigils are being held across the country to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. For some families, those memories are still painfully fresh as they search for loved ones who have recently vanished. And for others, the search has gone on too long and the unanswered questions linger like old wounds. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh has more on today's commemorations.
In the face of ever-dwindling odds, Donna Bartlett is holding on to hope.
This was in December of 21, eh? Last picture I got of her.
She says her granddaughter, Mercedes Marin, was struggling with drugs and living on the street. She hasn't been seen since March.
We're putting up posters now all over. While we're driving around, we're seeing people, and some people tell us they know her, but they haven't seen her around, and nobody's seen her for a long time.
Another Indigenous woman missing in a city where the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls came to national prominence with the death of Tina Fontaine 8 years ago. Today, prayers not far from the river where Fontaine's body was found, one of dozens of ceremonies and vigils held across the country. In Toronto, a small demonstration in advance of a vigil.
Today is a day about bringing community together to heal.
3 years ago, the inquiry into murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls made 231 far-ranging calls for justice. Changes to legislation, social and health supports, and law enforcement, all with a view to offering greater protection to Indigenous women. At a vigil on Parliament Hill, criticisms the federal government is moving too slowly. Senator Michelle Odette was an inquiry commissioner.
They order it. Now, what is the response?
What we've seen are results that are far too slow.
Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller says the government has invested over $1 billion in supports, including housing, but concedes more urgency is needed.
I don't think anyone should be happy until every woman, child, and vulnerable person in this country is safe and free from violence.
Meanwhile, Donna Bartlett is just trying to get some answers.
It's scary. We just want to find her alive.
Keeping the pressure on police, the community, and anyone who will listen. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
First thing is visit Newfoundland.
As Come From Away says goodbye to Broadway, its writer has a message for Saturday's final audience. That's next. Crews are continuing to work to restore power in parts of Atlantic Canada after Fiona ripped through the region 10 days ago. Life without power inside senior and group homes has been challenging. Many of those homes are on a priority list, but after days still in the dark, some are asking what that means. Laura Meter has more on that story.
The owner of Bevan Lodge worries this generator won't make it much longer.
We are supposed to be on the priority list, so that's kind of confusing for us. Half of the street does have power, but starting at us all the way up the rest of the street, there's no power.
They've had to ration what power they use, and the long outage is an extra worry for residents who are already struggling with physical and mental disabilities.
It's really hard on the residents. It's been very stressful for myself.
Geneva Villa lost power for 7 days, and their generator stopped working before power came back.
Well, our generator was running for 5.5 days, and then it collapsed.
They were able to borrow one from the city of Charlottetown. Staff say their area was hard hit, so they understand why it took a while to get power back, but it wasn't easy.
The seniors were having difficulties with it, though. They were really struggling with the lack of power.
The elevator couldn't run, and the generator only powers lights in common areas, so people use flashlights in their rooms. 6 people fell during the outages.
It was because of the darkness. They just lost their balance or their footing or something.
The Mount was about 8 days without power. Administrators say they asked about how priorities work.
You know, we were told that there were some priorities, but it certainly wasn't clear what the plan was and how those were going to be rolled out.
Maritime Electric says senior homes are prioritized, but some were hard to reach and in areas where poles had to be rebuilt. Laura Meter, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Well, Hockey Canada was on the defensive today over its handling of alleged group sexual assault cases involving junior hockey players. The new interim chair of the organization's board of directors testified at a parliamentary committee reviewing the issue. She gave the current leadership a top rating, but MPs say it's a failure and are calling for more changes at the top. CBC's Ashley Burke has the details.
The new interim chair of Hockey Canada today with a new defense.
Suggesting that toxic behavior is somehow a specific hockey problem or to scapegoat hockey as a centerpiece for toxic culture is, in my opinion, counterproductive.
The comment comes after CBC's The Fifth Estate identified 15 cases of alleged group sexual assaults that police investigated involving hockey players since 1989. 50 players were accused and only 1 convicted.
What we're hearing from Hockey Canada is more than one incident of athletes acting like a pack of hooligans. And I'm wondering, and we don't hear that from other athletes in other sports.
MPs of all political stripes want Hockey Canada's leadership to step down, but Andrea Skinner pushed back.
Our board, frankly, does not share the view that senior leadership should be replaced on the basis of what we consider to be substantial misinformation and unduly cynical attacks.
Are you afraid of change?
I absolutely am not afraid of change. I welcome it. I believe that we have changed. We're continuing to change. I think that there is a significant risk to the organization if all of the board resigns and all of senior leadership is no longer there. Will the lights stay on the rink? I don't know. We can't predict that, and to me, that's not a risk worth taking.
Why is the leader of this organization being protected rather than being held accountable?
The leader is not being protected.
Then Skinner gave the president and CEO of Hockey Canada, Scott Smith, a top mark.
What grade from an A to an F would you give him in his role at Hockey Canada right now?
I would say that he's conducting himself as an A in the circumstances.
MP said they were shocked.
I'd have to give them an F on this one.
It's a failure. It's an F. Mr. Smith has not done what is necessary to change the culture within Hockey Canada.
You have to living. Don't finish the course. Just living.
All of this led to the Minister of Sport today calling on Hockey Canada's provincial and territorial members with voting power to push for leadership change. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, starting 6 months ago, some pharmacies started running out of children's cold and flu medications, and that left some parents scrambling to track them down. But doctors and pharmacists say there's no need for panic buying. Alternatives do exist. Christine Birak explains.
Knowing pharmacy shelves might be bare, some parents are turning online, where the search for kids' cold and flu meds is feverish, filled with posts on where to find children's Tylenol or Advil, accusations of hoarding, and pleas for help to spare a bottle for a sick child.
So instead of having it shipped from the States, we had it shipped from Alberta.
Jenna Lee Gordon is a mom of 3, including little AJ.
I'm like, what if he gets sick and we don't have anything to help relieve that? So it was very, very scary, very worrisome for me and my family.
We need to always remember that the vast majority of fevers in young immunized children who are previously healthy are caused by viruses and they'll go away on their own.
Dr. Sarah Reed deals with pediatric emergencies. As cold, flu, and COVID cases rise, she says demand for fever meds will too.
I would hope that parents don't panic, that there are things available to help their child to be more comfortable.
Generally, you can go talk to your pharmacist and they will help you find a solution.
So give me a sense of what a pharmacist would do. Pharmacy professor Mina Tadros says everyday pain and fever meds can be made in a pharmacy. So this is a powder, right?
Yeah, this is a powder.
The active ingredient is acetaminophen.
Make sure that it's pretty consistent. Grind it out, add the liquid little by little.
Tadros says the mixture can be refrigerated for 2 weeks, but insists don't ask for it or buy bottles off the shelves unless your child is sick.
By you taking 20 off, the shelf is empty, that pharmacy has to order it, someone comes in and the hysteria continues.
Gordon's order arrived as a 2-pack.
I definitely want to leave some for other parents.
She hopes her kids won't need it and offered to share her bottles online for free. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
Bless you.
Last night we showed you the big weekend finale of Come From Away on Broadway. What we didn't get to show you were the final words from the writers of the show, Irene Sankoff and David Hine, in which they talked about this province. Here's what they had to say.
I'm going to ask 3 things from you in exchange for the show. The first thing is visit Newfoundland. Chris mentioned everyone who worked on the show. They're not only amazing in creating an amazing show, but they've also been inspired in the same way that we were inspired to do good and to embody the spirit of Newfoundland. And so the thing I'd like to ask you to do is that if you were inspired as well, go out and make the world a better place. They just had a break-in, they need help, it's kitten season. There's hurricane victims on the west coast of Newfoundland. Anyone.
Pay it forward 9/11. Someplace in Newfoundland where people who are undergoing cancer treatment and their families can stay in their time of need. What are we forgetting?
Or just the person next to you, or the person on the street. Anyone. You can do kindness any single day. That's what they're doing.
Folks in Alberta are celebrating the arrival of the Great Pumpkin. It took top prize at the annual county fair in Smoky Lake. The winner, an incredible 2,537 pounds. That's about 1,150 kilograms. Organizers say it's the largest pumpkin ever recorded in Canada. A lot of pumpkin pies there. We'll be back with Heather's forecast. may say it's too soon to start thinking about Christmas, but it's top of mind at a tree farm in Cape Breton. They're coming up on their busiest season, and Fiona has brought some serious setbacks. Matthew Moore has this report.
Green Hills Farm sits about 20 minutes outside of Sydney. The massive Christmas tree farm sold about 4,000 trees last year alone. Usually during this time of year, workers are busy trimming and shaping the trees to get them ready for the holiday season. But instead, they're having to remove down trees blocking the property.
So typically we open at the end of October. We definitely won't be opening then this year. We obviously have to get some rebuilding on greenhouses, and right now the time that we're usually spending now shearing and getting everything ready, we're spending that on different things to try to get everything safe and whatnot again. So we haven't determined when we're going to open just yet. We're still going through. We're ordering supplies, trying to book electricians.
While not many Christmas trees suffered damage here, the greenhouse where wreaths are made was battered. Insurance does not cover the damage done to these types of structures. Meanwhile, Jenna Lee and her husband have been busy clearing paths through the several acres they own. With November being the busiest time of year, they're running out of time to get trees ready for the public.
It's definitely a concern because we only have, we're a small family-run business. We only have so much time and we only have so many people to be able to help everybody. So it's definitely going to be a condensed, busy season.
She says they're looking into what government supports they can apply for. They already have new wrap to put onto their greenhouse, but are waiting for an electrician to safely rewire the building. She knows this business was lucky compared to many others, but she says the timing of Fiona couldn't have been worse heading into the holiday season. Matthew Moore, CBC News, Albert Bridge.
Well, we talked about how beautiful tomorrow is going to be. Things are going to change on Wednesday. Temperatures looking a little more seasonal with showers for St. John's, Marystown, along the south coast and into Labrador. Up here in Nain, it looks like we may see some snow or a rain mix into Friday. Things looking similar, beautiful though, in central Newfoundland and along the west coast with showers for other parts of the island and maybe some flurries here in Labrador West. So that beautiful weather will not stick around. Let's take a look at our 5-day forecast now and how things are shaping up across St. John's and eastern Newfoundland. It looks like Wednesday is going to be a beautiful day. Precipitation moving in Thursday, Friday, Saturday, a 40% chance of rain there, clearing off on Sunday. Moving on to central and western Newfoundland. For central Newfoundland, again, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, mix of sun and cloud, 40% chance of rain on Saturday on your weekend, clearing off on Sunday with temperatures anywhere from 10 to 18 degrees, so still nice weather. Western Newfoundland looks similar. Nice end to your week with some precipitation persisting there through the weekend. On into Labrador now. For eastern Labrador, it looks like you're going to have some of that precipitation moving in a little bit earlier than the island. Thursday, Friday, some rain or snow on Saturday. Looks like a little rain so far. On Sunday, western Labrador, it looks like you are going to see some flurries on Friday or some flurries or rain on Sunday. Onto our weather photo now. This is the sunrise over Tilting on Fogo Island. And you've got to get up pretty early to see the sunrise most days. Eric Salek took this photo on his last few days of vacation on Fogo Island.
Beautiful shot. Yeah. And if you have any photos, you can send them in to nlphotos@cbc.ca. Great job, Heather.
Thank
you,
Carolyn.
How did it feel?
Good.
We're out of time. I'd love to talk with you more about it, but tomorrow is another day. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Good night.